Hello, here we are, Powerhouse Smart Friends and Colleagues. Another, what I would call heartfelt, amazing episode of our Powerhouse Cool Collabs podcast. As just a reminder, we're commutable. So it's only 20 to 25 minutes, which I can always talk much longer with some of these amazing guests. And today is no different. Wait till you meet Raad Ghantous. He's our guest today, dear friend of mine. And really, the three pillars that we try to bring to the audience here is one, all about being a leader in the industry and believing in collaboration. Two, what does your attitude of gratitude mean to you? And then how we're all, but especially my guests, are helping humanity in some way. So I am so honored to bring my dear network, and this particular guest today is a dear friend of mine. And I could go on and on about him, but I would rather let him tell you his story. So, Rod, welcome to my show.
Thank you, Wendy. It's so nice to be here with you. And congratulations on the podcast. It's awesome. You're doing great work with that and amazing guests. And so you're a living example of giving back in meaningful ways. Thank you for having me on the show.
Of
I've been kind of
course.
like waiting for the invite. I've known you a long time, but I wanted to see what you were doing with this, and it's really wonderful to watch what you're doing with it and how you're tying it in with the Powerhouse Smart layer and added depth and dimension to what you're offering through that. And grateful to have been involved with you in Powerhouse Smart for gosh, we were trying to remember the other day, like maybe it may even be up to 5 years involvement. And then, yeah, it's crazy. Like we just came back from Chicago from the third. I couldn't figure out it was the third or the fourth annual conference in Chicago that for Powerhouse, and being involved in it. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to be a speaker. I think it was last year with a presentation, and then being involved this year on just recapping some of the stuff that we've been doing this last year. It all kind of aligns, right? It all at the end of the day kind of aligns. I think people come into your life um, for different reasons, for different seasons, right? And it's interesting when you align with people at different phases of your life that give you depth, give you direction, are kind of like, you know, um, along, what do you call them? Like fellow explorers along the journey, so to
That's
speak,
right.
right?
Like a
And
spark. Like
as
you
the spark.
you are like just to be in the same room with you, and I feel like Zoom allows me to do that, especially since you and I travel and are all over the place. It's just that energy. I feel that you radiate this connection to me, and so that's absolutely what
I
this.
I feel the same, and I feed off yours too. And so this kind of ties in a little bit because of even more importance these days to do that, right? To do that in person. Like we've gotten to the point where we're all very virtual and very in contact or connected, so to speak. With I was just looking at my LinkedIn, and it's like 16,000 followers. I have more followers than I'm following on LinkedIn, and yet what does that really all mean, right? 16,000 people on LinkedIn. It's interesting the world we live in. It's interesting having the perspective of like you and I, where we remember the days before. We remember what it was like before, and there's good stuff that was before that I feel we have kind of lost touch with a little bit, and so it's important to consciously, intentionally, and with clarity kind of reconnect with some of those things that and not just set them aside just because we're in a world of convenience and technology. And the traveling does that. The traveling, I feel, regrounds you in some of those things, right? Because everybody, as you travel, is maybe not be doing it as simply as ordering on Instacart for an hour delivery or having the convenience of stuff. But to go back to what you were asking me first about the story, so thank
Yes.
you for having me on, Raad Ghantous. I am many things, I think, and sometimes that's complicated and too complex for people. Maybe I try to fit myself into a smaller box sometimes for people's comfort levels, and I've realized at this point in my life that no, this is just who I am. This is a complex situation. It's not complicated. It's just complex. It's multidimensional,
Hmm.
and I feel more alive in that space. So To thy own self be true. There's a book I'm reading right now that's titled Be Where Your Feet Are.
Mm,
And it's basically kind of builds off that sort of um, presence, being in the now, all that good, stuff that comes from that kind of thinking. But when you're living it versus just reading about it, versus like when you're really incorporating this and kind of standing strong in making this part of the fabric of your life, it takes on an interesting dimension. And I think it takes on an interesting dimension as we get older. We get more seasoned, maybe hopefully wiser. So I started off down a path of economics. I have an undergrad in economics that I got at the age of 20. I then went on to try to do a master's degree in marketing at an esteemed university called Claremont Graduate School in Claremont, California. And it was at the time the business school was the Peter Drucker business
oh.
management school. And at the age of 20, I didn't really know why the heck I was doing this. And I did not really complete the certification. I got very close, didn't get any kind of guidance, didn't know the system, and I did not complete it. But the interesting thing is sometimes even though you may go through the journey,
Mhm.
it's not necessarily the destination. You still get a lot of value from going through the journey. And this was a perfect example because I use all that stuff that I picked up along the way um, to and I apply it in daily living and my business, and then I went down the path of interior design as a sort of a shift and why not let's pursue this and see what it looks like with no intention really or clarity that I'm going to be an interior designer. This
Right.
back in '91. When the real estate market kind of crashed, and I was working with a developer, on job sites, which is a very comfortable zone for me because I grew up on job sites with my father being a civil engineer in the Middle East, and kind of I had an affinity for that. And I what I learned from that is that it really is the journey. And sometimes I think we're too focused on the output, on the production side of things, on the performance side of things. And it fits in certain parts of our lives. In certain phases of our lives, we're on. We're performing. We're hustling, right? I have a love-hate relationship with the word hustle because if anybody looks up the dictionary, looks up the word hustle, hustle at one point used to be a negative. Like you hustled somebody. You, right? And all of a sudden, this modern definition of the word hustle is to hustle for everything, to not even stop long enough at the mountain you have just conquered to appreciate the view from that vista vantage point, but all you can see is the next mountain to climb, right? And give a shout out to Jen Zella, who basically also was a speaker at the last conference, and the importance of sort of that balance. And I think sometimes society in today's age mistakes motion with productivity. And we live in a world of social media where if I'm not basically giving you a reason every day to remember me, hey, I'm here, I'm still relevant, whatever, it's a self-perpetuating false identity, I think. Like it's we have so much noise out there that we have basically lost the ability to discern where's the quantity, but also where's more importantly the quality of what I digest. So it puts more pressure on us to be intentional and clear on how we want to design our life. How do we want to design our life as professionals? How do we want to design our lives as personal lives? And how the two things are really very integrated. Like how do you show up in your not your most professional personality, but how do you show up in your wholeness? Like when we were on that safari in Africa in August, showing up in our wholeness, whether we were at Wild Hope or doing stuff for where we were visiting an NGO in Zimbabwe that is basically providing safe shelter in a way during the course of the day, safe place for kids to basically have that support to even when we were on safari, basically enjoying the elephants, or being on those rides in the bush every day, 2 or 3 times during the day, right? Getting our African massage, which is what they call it when you're riding in those open Land Rovers or Land Cruisers, basically, and you're bumping around all these groomed roads, even not even paved roads, right? And
Yeah.
you're just being jostled around, and you're getting your African massage. For those who don't, if you hear African massage now, you know what it means. But I think what's interesting is when you start to basically realize that being the best you can be, your wholeness, if you don't take the time to actually do that, your all aspects of your life start to suffer. So designing your own life professionally, reinvention, curiosity, and I think there's some societal things about, well, when you get to a certain point, society thinks that you're supposed to slow down. You're supposed to not be um, looking at what's the next adventure, what's the next journey that I can learn from, right? But life is all about that. The good experiences, the scars that you basically pick up along the way, relationships, how they manifest. You and I met in a situation that was very sort of professional in a way, and you and I have basically developed a very close friendship, and there's an alignment. So alignment is a big deal, right? And I think when you're in the building mode of life, sometimes you lose focus of the importance of that. And because you're just moving, you're constantly moving, and you may be moving from a worry of scarcity that, am I going to get that next job? I have to get that thing. You're sort of you're not present. You're spending time in the past and in the future, but not in the now. And yet all we have is really the now.
Well
Right?
said.
Because nobody's guaranteed tomorrow. Nobody's guaranteed what tomorrow is going to be. Change is the only constant. So I was talking to somebody today about the embracing of change. There's another book by a gentleman called Sterling Hawkins that I'm reading called Hunting Discomfort. Hunting discomfort, like looking for things that would basically get you out of your comfort zone. Because when you get to a point where you realize that comfort is important, but comfort could also be a killer. It could be a stifler. You could get stuck in this sort of umbrella of perceived control where you control your life and lose the fact that there are these some exciting things that happen. And you and I had a conversation about this, I think, where going through this year, I turned 60 in January, and going through this year where, well, thank you. I don't feel 60, but that's what it says on my passport.
You
So
don't look 60, so
I,
don't worry about
you're
it,
very,
right?
you're very kind, really very kind. And I don't feel it. And not to boast, but I don't feel like I look 60 either. And I think when there are different motivators that happens during the course of your life, there's a certain script that's basically given to all of us that, if you work hard, if you're going to get married, you're going to have kids, you're going to get a house, you're going to do all of this stuff. That's sort of the steps towards a meaningful, happy, successful life. But I think in the pursuit of happiness, which is right there in the Constitution, right? In the pursuit of happiness, sometimes we forget that it's not happiness. Happiness is a feeling. Joy is the purpose. And I know, give people a minute here to really think and maybe digest this a little bit. There's a difference between happiness and joy. Joy is something you can embrace. You can make it that your life is about finding that moments of joy. And you use the word love a lot, and it's very foundational. Like love of self, love of people around you. If there's the adage about if your cup, my cup runneth over, right? Or my cup is full. My glass is half full, half empty. I think your glass has to runneth over, and you're responsible to have your life be such that when your cup is runneth over is when you have extra to actually share,
Hmm.
to gift, to steward, to mentor, right? And we try to do that in our own ways. We also need to take the time to find out what is that meaningful joy in our own way. Like, are we following somebody else's script? And you and I have talked about how Gen X basically, we never got a script. We never got a roadmap,
Mhm.
right? And there's times when you go, oh my God, I wish I had a roadmap. I wish I had an owner's manual because it would make it easier. But then you forget that part of the meaningfulness of life is to craft and find what is your own roadmap, right? Or maybe
Absolutely.
there's some days where you actually understand that a roadmap is the last thing you want to follow. You want to be open to the road and seeing where it takes you, right? And so this goes back to that control. Do you control your life to the point where you basically are almost robbing yourself from those experiences,
That's right. Go through.
right?
Yeah, you
Yeah,
have.
and so I'm an interior designer, but I believe that I'm kind of more of a creator of experiences.
That's right.
Whether
Totally.
right, whether it's how we basically bring that professionally into work that we're doing that is aesthetic design. And design is so much more than aesthetic. In fact, I've never done design as an aesthetic. I've always done design. The clearest way to explain it when it comes to commercial design is where you are basically providing a business consultancy to further the ambitions or the goals or the objectives of somebody who you're helping, whether it's an office, whether it's a headquarters, whether it's a restaurant, whether it's a spa, and being curious enough to continue to grow in those fields that are not static. They are constantly changing faster every day. And how do you do that? And how do you do that where you don't lose the soul element of your differentiator, what you bring to the table versus just fall into this trap of the aesthetic, what gets the clicks, what gets the likes, right? What is the value? What is the real value you're bringing to that client? Similarly with residential, and even more so now with sort of this where I'm at in life, where it's like, what does your life look like? What does your environment in which you exercise your life on your own terms look like? Is it built the way you want it? We've talked about, multi-generational households and how not everybody is a property owner these days. With cost of living the way it is, what are the other options out there? And as creators, as creatives, I should say, regardless of the medium that you are working in, I think we have an exciting opportunity every day to see how can we actually add value to people's lives.
Right on. You're so, first of all, you're so humble. Oh, I'm an interior designer after a few minutes of really heart-centered, like what is this purpose in life? Love, really deep words. And then you come out with, I'm an interior designer. You're so humble, my dear friend. And I
Thank you.
love all the things that you do and share. And I know all of that. What I really want to make sure before our unfortunately too short podcast is over is how can other people who are hearing you and me and just getting a taste of who you are, how can they collaborate with you? How can they work with you? How can they connect with you?
Um, there's no substitute to a sit down, what they used to call in the South to visit with people.
Hmm.
And we're doing it electronically here, but there's also an added layer of depth that happens when it's in person. Now, in some cases, geographically, we are not able to do that, and especially with our group at Powerhouse, there is a close-knit family where we encourage that kind of exchange, and we're scattered around the country at least, right? So I think there's a part of the electronic where it serves the purpose. But at some point, it needs to get deeper. Like every relationship, you need to basically put in the effort and the work. You have to be present and understand that you have to do, and I hate the word work because it's not work, it's joy, right? It's joy in connecting with people. And to collaborate on stuff, I think you can actually, first and foremost, have that conversation with no necessarily intentions. Like I think when I've been doing that my podcast for 10 plus years, right?
Yeah.
When I turned 60, and the podcast was locally or not locally, it was crowdsourced. The name was crowdsourced 10 years ago, being flippant on Facebook, and it became the Rad Life. And I'm like, okay, the Rad Life. And prior to that, I was trying to always correct people how to say my name. Is it Rod, R-O-D sounding, or is it Rad? And then basically they said the Rad Life, and it just kind of stuck. And I'm like, okay. And then how do you share? Like it's a delicate balance these days with privacy and online and all this stuff. Do you share personal stuff? That's a little bit of crossing the privacy border for me, but there's a whole range of space between complete privacy and complete everything out there. Like what's the personable thing? What is the value you can bring that you can share or I can share or we're both doing it really in empowering people to feel a sense of belonging. I think the word belonging is becoming more important, and to basically understand that kinship or even family is something we choose. Like you can have chosen family,
Mm-hmm.
chosen kinship, and you know when you're in that presence. You know when you have an alignment, right?
Yeah.
And it could be a temporary alignment, it could be more soul deep, anchored alignment between people just the way they are. So collaboration starts there. Starts with exploring and connecting and having a conversation that is not necessarily based on an agenda or what does success look like. That's another word, that's another very kind of flippant term that is used overused. Like, what does success look like? Well, if you don't know what success means to you,
Mm-hmm.
then how do you know what success looks like in any condition? So you need to take that time. Stillness is another thing that I've learned very much this year. You got to take the time to sit still, and if all you're doing is rushing from one thing to the other, and there's a lot of demands that people have in their individual private lives, professional lives, but you got to almost schedule the stillness to
Mm-hmm.
sit. So I protect my peace these days very, very strongly, almost like with armor on the parapet of a castle, right? Like I protect my peace almost every day till noon.
Good.
Doesn't mean I'm not doing stuff, but it means that I'm consciously giving myself the room to think, to breathe, to process, to metabolize, to learn from the lessons of the day, to feel gratitude, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that collaboration is where it all starts. As far as professionally, people can look at my website at radgantous.com, RAADGHANTOUS.com. We are in the process of trying to uh, embrace, again, AI, future proofing, like that kind of stuff, but also intentionally focusing the business on where we can be of most value, both commercially and residentially. And there's a lot of room in the residential space right now to do that. Commercial space is changing, markets are changing. We live in a world of uncertainty, unfortunately, right now, and people are hesitant. They're afraid, they're feeling alone, like they're the only ones going through things. So sharing openly, vulnerably, genuinely, authentically is the only way to live, as far as I'm concerned. And when I turned 60, I faced my own crisis. Like, what do I do now? I've been doing my business for over 22 years on my own. I over almost 30 with corporate, high-end corporate luxury hospitality before that. How do you reinvent? And it's never too late, but you got to basically get clear, get quiet enough to figure it out. And you got to experiment. You got to experiment. You can't be so caught up in what the outcome is to lose yourself and to rob yourself the ability to literally experiment. Some things will work. They will work a way that you don't think they're going to work. But the only way to find out is to take the journey, right? So in the course of that, I incorporated under the Rad Life as an umbrella, and I said, how can I actually add more value, like I've been doing sort of with the podcast, focus the podcast, and also kind of share my own personal journey of midlife reinvention, right? And expansion, like not expansion of the business, but expansion of myself,
Really.
right? And so we ended up putting out a magazine called The Rad Life.
I love it, and I love that the intent is to kind of mentor, but in a huge way, guide, share, elevate, enlighten. It's
Right.
just, Rod, you are so again, you said you turned 60. We're not 60. We're way younger than that. We have a whole half a life left.
Yeah.
This is just the
Well, I mean,
beginning.
let's just tell people what it is, and I'm just using statistics here, right?
Yeah.
Average age of a person before they pass away, okay, is 78 in the United States. I looked it up today, right?
Okay.
Now, my father passed away in his 80s. My grandfather on my mother's side passed away in his 90s. Let's just assume that I've got as much time left as my dad. Well, that gives me 20, almost 30 years.
That's a long
Okay.
time,
I'm
baby.
60. That's a third of my life that's still ahead of me. And we are not living or aging or health wise operating the same way as the prior generation. So let's just say that that's 20 plus years, 25 plus years, right?
Right.
What are you going to do with that life? What is the legacy you're going to leave? Now, I don't have kids. I've touched a bunch of kids positively, I like to think, from relationships that I've been in. I take my responsibility with chosen responsibility seriously when it comes to kind of supporting that as a legacy. But what else can I do? And I looked around and I realized, including when we were on travel, actually, that not limited by geography, not even limited by age per se, beyond a certain point. Like I think it becomes more of a reality beyond a certain point, but it could be 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s. As the world uncertainty is elevated, what can I do that is sharing honestly and from my foundational heart, so to speak,
Hmm.
to give people a sense that they're not alone
That's right.
in this moment of crisis or moment of transition or change or reinvention. What can I do to give people a sense that they're not alone? What can I do to give people a sense of community, if you will?
Hmm.
And then it's not just me. I mean, the magazine will probably print twice a year in terms of print content. And if anybody's interested in the magazine, let me know. The website is theradlife.com. You can reach me. I'm overexposed on social. In fact, I've stepped away and let somebody else do it for me because I've been online since '94. So it's like you're right. But we're printing the magazine every 6 months in print. We're sending it out to households. I am using the back of the magazine as a promotion for the design business, but I'm also highlighting other resources for people, right?
Right.
And the thing I will say is you have freedom always to reinvent.
I love
It's, you have always have freedom to reinvent, and you have to give yourself the permission because it's yours to have
that. Hmm.
of doing it on your own terms.
That's right.
On what
Living your
aligns
best life.
what aligns for you. So we did that. The podcast has been elevated to try and seek out other people. The website has some resources for books that I have read. It's not really influencer as much as consciously and authentically sharing what I am doing and what other people are doing. So if you go to the website itself, theradlife.com, you will find articles from other people. Hopefully, Wendy at one point will write an article for the magazine,
Bet.
right? And I welcome anybody who feels like they have and want to share their own personal journey, their own personal point of transformation,
Hmm.
how they did it. Because when you do that, you empower other people
Hmm.
and leaving people better than you found them, whether it's in their homes through design, whether it's in their businesses through design, whether it's through sharing your own reflections, like I did on the trip to Africa, like I did on my trip to Baja. There was a lot of travel this year for me because I had been in a bit of a microcosm in Orange County, and I felt like I needed to basically reconnect with a little bit more of that globalness of myself.
Hmm.
It was for personal reasons, for family and losses, and losing my parents and so forth. I did not do that for about 7 years, 8 years. And when I did it this year, it started off as being almost a little bit of an escape. What came out of that, especially this last trip to Samos, Greece, which is an island very close to the coast of Turkey,
Love the pictures. Wow.
right? And it's steamed in mythology, the birthplace of Pythagoras, Hera and Zeus honeymoon there. That's where Hera's from. You have 500-year olive trees. They make their own sweet after dinner wine for they've been doing it for centuries, and they were known for it in ancient times. To running into people that own little wineries and having dinner with them, to being there unintentionally when the season was closing and having restaurants closing the last night I was there, to then basically reopen the next day, catering to the 32,000 people that live on the island, right? It, it forced me to be quiet, to be still, because I was off season. The island is not what you think of of Greek islands. It was woody. It had oak trees. It had elm forests. It had wild boar hunting. The roads looked like they belonged on some Mario Brothers go-kart game. They were, and even ended up basically saving a dog.
My dear
Taking,
friend, you are a life you are a life learned soul, and if I could summarize, you are a messenger. that's what the Rod Life is all about, right? The Rad Life. Sorry, I call it. I use your first name,
The Rad
but
Life. Yeah.
you're sharing this transformation and this conscious, enlightenment and unity. And I'm just so blessed to be in your presence and in your life, and I'm thrilled that I'm going to be able to share you with everyone out there that's going to hear this today. So, unfortunately, we could go on, and I get to be with you tomorrow at
I get to see you tomorrow. Yep.
West Edge Design Fair.
West
We're
Edge
leading
Design.
Rod's helping me lead a group of 120 luxury industry professionals for a private tour at West
Yep.
Edge in Santa Monica. And he's going to be in all of our Powerhouse Smart stuff forever because I'm not letting him go. He's a member of the family now.
Well, and you and I, let's do a little plug here, Wendy, too. You and I are looking at the development of, and you thank you for trusting me with this because I know it's your baby, but trusting me with actually building the chapter for Orange County, San Diego,
Yes.
and Southern California presence for Powerhouse. For those who don't know about Powerhouse, check out the Powerhouse website. It's by invitation only. It's not what you would think of as a networking group. It's more of a community. It's a place of belonging and
I love that.
of like-minded people, right? And we talk about that as a differentiator for this group over and over and over. But if you're interested in that, reach out to me or Wendy, and so we can basically, have a sit down and a visit and find out if it's a fit and an alignment. But I really, really, my I feel my life has been enriched by knowing you and
Oh,
in the most meaningful way, Wendy. No, it's true. I just want to basically acknowledge this because sometimes we get so busy we don't take the time to do that. And you and Johnny and everybody through that spending time with you guys in Africa in August, it's all part of that we woven fabric of how do you want to design your life.
that's right. Designing your life. Soul Circle. We're in you can choose, and like you said, family doesn't have to be blood, and you can participate in helping me raise my family, my kids. You can be Uncle Rod, not a problem. And
I,
Uncle,
I love that. I do Uncle very well.
okay. And we're in this world, we're in this lifetime. We're obviously eternal souls, but we're in this lifetime, and let's make the best of it. Let's carry each other forward. And of course, my leaf blower guy.
I had that happen last week when I was doing a podcast. Let me just end with one thing, Wendy, if I can leave people with one thing, right? And I'll tie it back to something that happened after everybody left because I was too not uncertain. I didn't want anybody to talk me out of it, and you know where I'm going with this. But so I one of the revelations that I got this year was realizing that uncertainty, right, is something that when we're kids, like uncertainty, when you say uncertainty, it's a scary thing, man. I don't know what's coming. I don't know how to control it. My intention, my muscle says, let's control, right? Because it's the only way I can protect, defend, whatever, right? And so uncertainty when we're kids is something that we actually have a different take on, I realized. When we wake up in the morning when we're kids and we don't know what life is going to bring that day, there's a part of us that's excited about the not knowing, that has a curiosity of pleasantly being surprised. Now, sometimes that is the case, sometimes it's not. But we tend to have a little bit more openness to see things through the fact that uncertainty is not necessarily scary. It can actually be an anchor. It can actually be a pleasant surprise, a happy accident, so to speak, right? And so I realized that going through this journey this year, and I reconnected with that and realized that that muscle is still there. We just tend to atrophy it as we get older and we start being, I'm going to be the mature adult, responsible adult, you know? And so I even have a mug that says pretending to be a responsible adult, right? Just to remember that there's a time and place for everything. And what I did to literally anchor that emotionally, physically, mentally in me so I could refer to it. And this is what I mean by being responsible to designing your own life. Is when we did our safari and everybody left, I extended to stay in Victoria Falls. And I extended to do a couple of things, including interview the gentleman who ran the safari for us, Blessing, who is, Love for Africa as the company. And we're working on, you guys are working on, I'm working on doing an excursion through the Rad Life for people for safari next year with him. So if you're interested, again, reach out to me or Wendy. We've got a couple of safaris, and it's a life-changing experience. You don't want to miss out. Um, I literally signed up to bungee jump off the historic Victoria Falls Bridge that bridges Zimbabwe and Zambia. So it's bridging countries, symbolically bridging things. Jumping off that at a UNESCO cultural site, which is one of the three largest waterfalls in the world, and literally bungee jumping 39 stories, right? And I didn't tell anybody because I didn't want you guys basically talking me out of it or whatever. And I did that because I wanted to remind myself anytime I basically was facing uncertainty to at least have a benchmark of saying, well, how does this compare to bungee jumping of the Victoria Bridge? When I'm dealing with uncertainty and worry, how is this about? I mean, dude, you jumped off a Victoria Bridge 39 stories. How does this compare? This is nothing compared to that. You can manage this uncertainty. You can find something that's maybe joyful in this uncertainty or a lesson in this uncertainty. So to do that, again, goes back to that designing your life on your own terms. You always have that right to do. And you doesn't mean you abandon your life, but it means you add dimension and depth to your life. So anybody who's interested in any of that, shared experiences, check out the Rad Life, the radlife.com website. Reach out to me from the professional perspective, whether it's residential or commercial, and just remember, freedom always.
Oh, I love that. I love that. With that, you're going to see all the links. Click the links, connect with us. We want to see you. Rod, love you. Thank you for being here.
Love you, my friend. See you tomorrow. I'm looking forward to it very much.
Me too. It's going to be
Thank
great.
you for the opportunity, Wendy.
Oh, it's amazing.
Bye,
Always.
everybody.
Bye.